you ever lost your shit on someone by accident? You really didn't mean to, but at that heat of the moment, you just lost it, right? Lost it, either yelled at somebody or even we didn't say something instead of really wanting to say something. And we realize this even maybe minutes, sometimes maybe hours after, sometimes even days that we are like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have lost my shit on that person, or maybe I should have said something. And this is such an important topic to talk about because what we're going to talk about today here is the window of tolerance and give you a really detailed understanding as to why that potentially happened to you. It has happened to me many times where I'm like, well, maybe I shouldn't have said that. It was like a little abrupt. Or there were also times where I was like, yeah, I could have said something, but didn't. But there's an actual reason as to why we didn't say something or why we said too much, and it is because at that moment of time, our nervous system was dysregulated. And dysregulation is not a bad thing, right? It can be maladaptive. But once we have a thorough understanding of what it is and really learning about our internal surveillance system that is really only trying to protect us from dying, then this thorough understanding of our surveillance system, of our survival mechanisms, it really truly sets us free so that we can actually become the cliche saying here, the best version of ourselves. And so I'm going to talk about the window of tolerance. I'm going to share my screen with you, really hoping that this works. So here we go. I tried it and it didn't work well the last time, but we are hoping that the second time is good. And so you should see my screen here regarding the window of tolerance. And again, I'm just going to check to see that it does work. So this can get a little bit scary. Um, all right, so this can be a little bit scary, but I'll explain this. When we are in a regulated state, which means that our nervous system is normally ebbing and flowing, most people think that a regulated nervous system is calm. Nuh-uh. A calm nervous system only is actually also dysregulated because we need activation. We need enough alertness. We need to be able to set those boundaries really firmly, and we need that sympathetic activation. That is normal. It is through ebbing and flowing and staying in this green window that really helps us to be regulated and be adaptive and resilient in terms of the challenges that we face in our lives, right? Because if we have a challenge and we flight and run away from it and even shut down and don't do anything, is that really what's best for us? Is that really what's best for everyone around us? So we want to be able to go with the normal ebbs and flows of life because shit happens. Shit happens. It is our ability to deal with them that actually matters. And through working on our window of tolerance is really what sets us up for success. So as you can see here, this is the window that we want to be in. A healthy amount of green, which is where we can have our flow, we can activate our energies and do the things that we want to do in life, and also making sure that we have enough time to recover and go down into our healthy ventrovagal parasympathetic state. All of these states are going to be addressed in very, very much detail inside the neuroplasticity jumpstart workshop. But if you look at this whole thing, this is a snapshot of a person who is currently regulated at this moment in time, and they are not having a lot of, they are here having just enough arousal. They're not down here where they're just really don't have any energy, and they're not up here when they're too wound up in terms of their energy. They're going up and down, going and flowing as the day goes by, compared to a person who is dysregulated. And as you can see, the window, the green part here is a lot smaller. which means that their ability to handle the ebbs and flows and be in a state where they can um, be alert and meet the demands versus not too under, not too flat, not too tired is really just a very small window. And they're spending a lot of time in how arousal, fight or flight, and or they're shifting back and forth between the parasympathetic dorsal vagal state, which is more shut down and freeze. So this is a picture of the moment in time of dysregulation, and inside the neuroplasticity jumpstart workshop, it is actually a workout too. um, what we'll actually talk about is that it's not bad to be dysregulated. What you learn is the importance of recognizing that you are dysregulated and bringing yourself back to the window. That is the skill that you will learn inside this workshop, which, if you can't see the value in that, you definitely want to really think of the different ways as to how you show up today in your daily life and see where you can improve as to how to keep yourself in more in a steady state. So this is someone who is hanging out way too much in the hyperarousal or hypoarousal state, and they're not hanging out much here. And I'll give you an example in the next slide. So for example, we have client John Doe. John Doe is having lunch with his sister. They are planning an Easter gathering for them and their family, and they're disagreeing. They're disagreeing about something, and it's not something big. It's just like, who is going to buy the cake? Are we going to buy the cake or are we going to make the cake? That's the disagreement right now, right? And John Doe disagreeing with his sister Jane Doe. um, right now during this disagreement, he really doesn't want to pick up the cake. He would rather just buy it and not have to think about it. But the sister is really like, but you make really good cakes, John Doe. Why don't you just make it? And he's like, I don't want to make it because I have a lot to do and Easter, blah, 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 blah. So he's getting very, very activated here. But because John Doe has done the regulation work, it is fine. Like he's up here, his energy is up here, and he can, make the point that he wants to make. He, is having a really, um, even though his energy is up, he's having a very reasonable conversation with his sister, and he might go into the yellow part a little bit, but he is able to just maintain a sense of, he can compromise and he can negotiate and uh, he can be in a very healthy conversation with his sister. But so see this, well, this one wasn't working the last time either. For some reason, this slide is not good. So going back here, John Doe is fine, right? He's fine having a good conversation with Sister Jane. But the exact same activation, if John Doe were to be dysregulated, you can see that he's in the red right here. He is now hyper aroused. And that same circumstance, where if he was regulated, he would have been fine, that exact same circumstance and that same disagreement as to if they're going to just buy the cake or make the cake has now been placed in the hyperarousal sympathetic nervous system state, which means that he loses his shit, right? He loses his shit over this, yells at the sister and says, you are always selfish. You never ever want to make me do something. I can decide for myself. I am a grown up, doing all those things. Hmm. Excuse me. Wow. Excuse me. Had a moment there. So just that same activation with him has now come into a like an overblown proportion, right? Because he hasn't managed his stress levels as well as he could have, and he has been hanging out in this hyper aroused state for a long time. So it doesn't take much for him to blow his fuse to go into that fight or flight energy, right? And so this is why it is so important for us to really regulate our nervous system and know exactly where we're at. Because if we are, if this is good, we've increased our window of tolerance, it's all good. But if we have a disagreement and we're dysregulated, then we could act in ways that are just not good for us. And if you can also see there, this is really pissing me off. That is not working. But yeah, as you can see here, this red zone here is not red by an accident, If we hang out too much here, it does cause a lot of inflammation in our bodies, especially in the long term. Being in a sympathetic nervous system state without going back into our window of tolerance can really affect our health in ways that we might not notice. Something like high blood pressure is like the invisible killer now, right? Not a lot of people know that they have high blood pressure, but they actually have it because they're hanging out here in this state. And if we hang out here in this state for a very long time, that could lead to chronic diseases over time, such as, coronary heart disease or stroke. And we don't want that shit, right? Who wants that? Nobody. So by starting today and really getting to know where we're at right now, even if our window of tolerance is here in the small area right now, through using principles of neuroplasticity, we can eventually increase it to here. So minor disagreements from family members, weird ass comments from the internet isn't going to phase us, and it's just going to be up here. It's just going to piss us off and we'll just like be okay with brushing it off, versus every single comment makes us feel shit about ourselves and activates that, which then cascades into the very very bad chronic things that can potentially harm our health in the long term. So by doing this today, we can really make a big difference and set ourselves up for the future so we don't have to be a victim of disease, right? We want to optimize our health, and I know that that is important to you too. And we can definitely go from here to here through nervous system regulation practices that really work on the body and getting the body and using our body to regulate our brains, survival brain. A lot of the somatic practices that are very, very specific to which state you're in is what you're going to learn in the neuroplasticity jumpstart workshop. And it's really its goal is to help you use your body to calm down the survival brain so that the survival brain is communicating very, very clearly with your frontal cortex, which is involved in critical thinking, and it can calm that system down so that when a sister wants you to bake the cake, then you could say, no, I don't want to do that shit. That is it. This is the end of the discussion. And there's no resentment from either parties. And you can definitely have meaningful health because we're not hanging out in the red zone, increasing our blood pressure. We're in an optimum state. And so this is one of very, very many benefits you will get from signing up for the neuroplasticity jumpstart workout. It's going to be a workout now. I've said it twice. So this is the biggest thing that you can do for yourself. A great way to start the year by learning exactly how your nervous system works, how your internal surveillance system works. It can definitely help you out for the very, very challenging times in your business. You help your client with their health, right? So you want to walk the talk as well and being regulated yourself so that you also have the ability to teach this very powerful tool for your clients, because again, specificity. And one of the biggest things, if you've already learned how to regulate your nervous system, the biggest thing that we actually talk about inside the workshop is the specificity. If you're hypoaroused here, then using some breathing practices that help you to be more relaxed ain't gonna help, right? Like that doesn't even make sense. That's not the right prescription. If we're in a hyperaroused state and we're calming our nervous system down, that just makes things worse. Like that doesn't make sense. And so the other way is also true. If we're already wound up, using practices that help us wind up and increase energy in our system just makes matters worse and can potentially put us into an anxiety or panic attack, right? So specificity works just like I wouldn't give a patient as a nurse IV fluids who has heart failure. I would not do that. That could really fuck up their kidneys and the rest of their body. I would not do that, even though IV fluids is something that a lot of clients need and can be very life saving for a heart failure patient. No, no. So knowing this and what you learn here is actually based a lot in the the model of actually working with a human body.